the meeting.
Councilman Beal.
Here.
Councilwoman Bettina. Councilman Phillips.
Here.
Councilman Cousins.
Here.
Supervisor Thurston.
Here. Everyone please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Everyone please be seated. Before we get into the approval of the agenda and the minutes, as I communicated an email to the board members, I have 3 additional grant applications I wanted to, raise, for a discussion when we discuss also Resolution 2019-151 on grant application. And these are relating to a local government efficiency grant, water quality improvement program we call WQIP, as well as local waterfront revitalization program, WLRP. And I realize that actually the filing dates for those grants are all on July 26th. So that's why I'm raising it. If there's, is there any motion to add those to the agenda?
Move to amend.
Okay, a second over here, Mr.
Second.
Cosmet. So all in favor?
Aye.
Any nays or objections?
No.
The motion passes. So now I'd like to have a motion to adopt the agenda, please.
I'll move it. Second.
All in favor? Aye. Any nays or abstentions? Seeing none, the motion passed. Next item is to move to acknowledge the minutes of the June 24th, 2019 minute.
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any nays or abstentions? Seeing none, the motion passes. The next item is to open the public portion of the meeting. This is for discussion points that any of the residents, anybody in attendance may like to raise, present to the board for their consideration.
I'll move to open the public portion.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Any nays or abstentions? Seeing none, the motion passed. So now we have the public portion of the meeting, and if anyone would like to make a comment on any aspect of the agenda items, then please come up to the podium, identify yourself and your residence within the town. Yes, sir.
How you doing? My name's Michael Cipolla. Residence is 26 Scriprow Road in Wappingers. I came here because of Community Day, actually. I had noticed on the Facebook page that, I was asking about pricing for the rides for an event that had been historically free. I noticed that I was given the pricing for that event at 6:35 p.m. the day before the event. Again, for an event that's historically free. Your tickets were around $2 each and wristbands were $25. The wristband day was the day after pricing was released at 6:35. Not enough notice for residents who, again, historically come to this free event, and now, we're not the richest of communities. Some people have to save for this. It wasn't taken into account. Then, my comments are attacked by friends of the recreation department that if I had a problem with the event, I shouldn't go, and I should come here and talk to you guys. And I don't know what goes into an event planning or a carnival. I work for an event company. We do community days. We do community day. You guys turn the event into a carnival, a for-profit carnival, which is absolutely fine. But you didn't give the residents any sort of notice. The event was created on Facebook on May 13th with very, 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 very little marketing. The vendor list was up there, plenty of time. Sign up, be a vendor. You never told the residents what it would cost, and you upset some people. You put them in a situation where they were gonna walk into this event and either have to disappoint their kids or shell out a lot of money they weren't expecting to. Not saying the vendors and the food and things wouldn't cost money, but the rides, again, historically free. I understand sometimes there are problems with amusement companies, but it's not something that you guys wouldn't have known, well in advance, what the cost of renting out these amusements was going to be. So I think, again, it was handled poorly, and you owe the community definitely an apology. At a minimum, an apology. In 3 months, when Community Day should have been in September, you can still put an event on for free with small rides for kids, because Not for nothing, I know everybody wants to say this was a great event, but you had vendors on the Facebook page at 5 o'clock on Saturday saying, why are you doing the fireworks? So it couldn't have been that successful.
Sir, I've heard enough, to be honest with you.
Okay.
Clearly, you've come here with an agenda. I was responding to some of the Facebook posts. We've discussed this model for 6 months.
Longer than that.
Longer than 6 months. We brought in a Midway company from Long Island. We've had a number of complaints over the past couple of years about the quality of rides that we've had or haven't had. We openly discussed this planning process at least 6 months in advance about bringing in a company that is going to change the model.
And
This is not an uncommon model, sir.
Where were the prices listed for the residents? Why was that
Prices, we
listed
don't have to list the prices for the
The day
residents.
before the event, that's when you tell people what they have
Sir,
to pay for something?
I have the floor, okay?
I had the floor and you cut me
I have
off,
the
sir.
floor now, so hear me out. We looked at what other price models were for other carnivals,
Okay.
whether it be the carnival on Stringham Road, whether it be the Pauling Fire Department Carnival, whether it be the Millbrook Fire Department Carnival, whether it be the Red Hook Anniversary Carnival. We looked at the models.
Established events you're
This is
talking
not
about.
no, they're not established events. Sir, let me speak. Not all these communities have annual events. We have had an open and honest discussion about changing this model. I've been here the longest on this board, and I will tell you that I've advocated for this model longer than anybody else here, okay? The town of Wappinger did not pay to rent the rides this year, okay? We saved the taxpayers thousands of dollars by doing a model such as this. If $2 per ticket is a hardship for you, sir,
That'd
you
be
are the
$6
only person that I've heard.
That would be $6 a ride.
$6 a ride,
Parents
sir.
had to go on too, so I mean, you
That- this
can
is
sit
your
there and make
opinion.
excuses.
Okay.
This is your opinion, sir, and we have been here having this discussion.
Thank you for insulting me and
for-
my income.
I'm not insulting you, I'm stating fact.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for your opinion. But please leave your agenda at home, because I can read through the lines on the social media page.
Okay, let's
So
stop
thank
with
you
the
very
argument.
much. You can speak to me after the meeting, or you can call me anytime. And I know you're upset as well, ma'am. I saw your comments, I responded to your comments as well. I responded to comments that were,
You're saying you responded to mine. You
Okay,
did not
okay.
respond to mine.
clearly,
Yeah, Councilman Bill, let's,
clearly you both have an agenda, okay? I've been here long enough to see that. I'll be happy to discuss it.
Well, because you did my work.
But let's understand one thing, okay? If you're going to stand here and imply that we did something that was an insult to you, I want you to understand how much money this town saved by using this model during this particular community day. In the past, we have spent over $7,000 to rent rides, to bring them here. The rides that we've brought here, and I've said this publicly before, could be featured on an episode of American Pickers, all right? I have had a problem with that. I've voted against spending that money year after year, and my fellow colleagues can attest to that. I did not agree with that model. This year, we brought brand-new rides from a company in Long Island that had to be here for 3 days in order to justify the existence of those rides. 2 of those rides that they brought this year are brand-new rides that they just entered into the circuit this year. That was them showing their investment to our event. Clearly, we cannot offer those rides at no cost, because those rides cost a lot of money, and that's not the model that they do. So if you have a problem with the way this event was handled, I would encourage you to get more involved ahead of the event, because we had these conversations for 6 months.
Yeah, let me just add one thing. All I'm going to say about this is I think we've had a number of models for Community Day. We've had situations where the Rotary used to take care of it. We used to charge for the rides. We've had events where we haven't had rides at all. We've had it in the summer, we had it in the fall. Now we tried a new model. Basically, a lot of times you want to try different things to see what works best for the community. Now, obviously, not everything's always going to be perfect, but we tried to put together a better event based upon what we thought would be a good idea. Now, certainly, next year, if there were certain suggestions on how we could even improve it, we're more than welcome to listen to those.
We'll be getting more involved.
And that's great, because I think that's what makes this community a great community, because people come up with ideas and we make things even better. So we tried to do it this year because we had some suggestions on how we could make it better. I think we did in a lot of ways. Certainly, nothing's perfect, and certainly I think we can make improvements, and we will. And we certainly welcome your suggestions, as well as the other residents of the community, to make it even a better one next year.
yeah, I would like to add,
And we were also told to enjoy our fourth.
okay, would you please identify yourself, ma'am? Yes, please.
My name is Kathleen Gallinger. I'm also at 26 Scribbo Lane, Wappingers Falls.
Okay. thank
Anything
you.
else?
Do you know the recreation director?
I do.
Okay.
I have a former relationship
Exactly.
with her, but this has nothing.
Thank you.
Oh,
Thank
no,
you.
no, no, if we're bringing that.
Let her speak.
is-
Please sit down.
Oh,
She
no,
has
no,
the
no,
floor.
he brought up something
Yes.
personal.
Please.
I asked a question.
You
asked
answered,
a
the lady
question.
has the
I have
floor.
a former
Okay.
relationship with her, which has nothing to do with this.
Mm-hmm.
Why would you bring that up?
Because I was curious to know if you were a former friend of her.
What does that have to do with anything?
Perhaps you can tell us after the meeting.
Would you like me to tell you about it now?
No,
'Cause
I
you're
don't
bringing
think,
it
I
up-
think that's public. It could open you up to lawsuit, so don't
Well, then why
go
is
through
he
that.
asking me questions?
I just
Why
find it-
is he asking me
He's-
personal
he's-
questions?
I find it
that
very
has
interesting.
nothing-
Please.
I find it very interesting, the dynamic that exists between you and the recreation director and what we had to face on our social media page, okay? And the fact that you're here tonight to complain about an event that she was in charge of. That's all.
This has nothing to do with her. Because what happened, what started all of this was her friend posted something and then deleted it.
Okay.
I do have the screenshot if you'd like me to bring it up here
We
now.
have the screenshot as well.
Oh,
We've
don't
seen
need
it
to-
all.
We don't need to see that.
We've seen it
So,
all.
all
Okay,
right.
look, point of order, the point's been made, we'll take under advisement. But I would, and you can talk
let's
after
also-
the meeting.
let's
What-
also
Bill,
understand-
Look, let's not,
Just one point of fact. These rides weren't always free in this event, okay? As the councilman from the Ward 4 stated, the model did exist when this was handled by the Rotary Club. So this is not some big change.
let me note something for the record, which we haven't talked about. One of the big considerations for this is the ride company last year, I and the board had to terminate for breach of contract because they refused to comply. They wanted it for nothing, okay? The previous year, they left all sorts of environmentally hazardous material. I'm just telling you what's behind this. We breached it and we still haven't recovered our deposit
I'm here
based
as a
on that.
town member, not as a friend or a
Yes,
former friend.
that's fine,
I
and we'll
didn't
talk.
know.
I also would like to mention, with respect to the tickets, we sold approximately or the vendors did, the ride company, 9,800 tickets at an average price of $1.82, per ticket. So there was, a lot of popularity, and there was, in fact, purchase. We will take under advisement your corrections, and we'd love to have you involved, in talking about it, okay?
Do you really think I'm gonna get involved after what, Mr.
Well, why not? Other people have had the discussions,
I just asked you a question, man.
After my former
Okay.
relationship was brought up, you
Okay,
really think I'm
okay,
gonna step into
as a
I
chair,
was just
I'm-
asking a
Bill,
question, that's
let's
all.
call
Just-
to order, okay? No further discussion.
I would love to be involved. I know
Fine.
that with amusement companies, there's ways that we can work it out. If it's
Right.
not yet.
And we already have some lessons learned and we understand what to do better.
Definitely a better way to do this where we can make it more successful.
Do you wish to make a comment? Please, come on up, sir, and identify your name and your residence.
My name is Robert Wilson. I live on 15 Middle Bush Road in the town of Wappers. I am part of the Recreation Committee. I just want to point out, not just to these folks here tonight, but to any resident who posted on our webpage that, hey, you're all free, come on down, and please get involved. If you were at the event, you saw, we were understaffed, okay? Very much understaffed. But that event was publicized since December, January. We got approval from the school in February. We talked about, in meetings here, about pricing, about free, about charging the residents. It was a huge, huge discussion. So there is minutes out there that the public can go and look at and find out exactly what happened in here, what was said in here, by whom, whatever. But to only have to pay $2 to $3 per ticket with a company like that was an awesome thing to happen for our community day. So I just wanted to say my piece on that. But please, anybody out there that feels that there were problems, by all means, please come down and get involved. and let us know your opinion on how they should be fixed. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Just, or you may leave your name and address, contact information with me, my office supervisor, and we welcome it, okay? Yeah, you can write it down, an extra piece of paper, and we can do that, okay? So any other comments with respect to any other agenda item, that I'd like to open the floor, which it has been open for other comments at this point in time.
Seeing none, I'll make a motion to close the public portion.
Second.
Okay, all in favor? Aye. Any nays or abstentions? The motion passes. Next item is the audit report, and we welcome our auditor to come up from RBT accountants to give a presentation. Good evening.
Good evening, board members and supervisor. My name is Linda Hannigan. I'm a director with RBT CPAs. And this evening,
Michael, can you hear it back there? Okay,
Just, Joey, can you turn the room up a little bit? In the
turn
back?
the sound volume in the back up a little bit.
So again, I'm Linda Hannigan from RBT CPAs. We forwarded the draft financial statement and board report to you last week. Our initial comments, we're very happy to be here in July and not later in the year. We want to thank Frederick and his team for working with us to get the audit done quickly and efficiently. So I'm going to take first an overview of what we call our board report, and then take you through some financial statement highlights. So the report to the board is this document.
Yeah, put the microphone down. There you go.
It's just Linda Hannigan level.
The short person.
No, I mean as in voice level.
Yes, that's true too. I tend to speak.
Go ahead, Linda.
Sorry.
Thank you.
Sorry. So, the board report gives you an overview of our, the conduct of the audit, which again, as I mentioned to you, it went well, was very efficiently done this year. I think the board would be happy to note that included in there's our journal entries, our proposed adjustments. They went down over last year, which was an improvement. And also in here is included our findings, both our what we call significant deficiencies and management letter comments. And in both those cases, they went down as well. So that's a big improvement over last year. The details are provided in here. However, as I mentioned, the significant deficiency went from 4 to 2, and our management comments went from 6 to 3. So that was a very big improvement, I think, in terms of immediately taking our suggestions and putting them in place. And we thank the supervisor and Frederick for doing so. Then I'm going to move on to the financial statement highlights. And just as a reminder, our financial statement audit is done in order to determine whether the financial statements are fairly stated and according with generally accepted accounting principles. They are. It's also done under government auditing standards, and that requires us to do additional work and to have additional training in terms of looking at compliance. As far as the financials themselves, on page 10 is our statement of net position, and you'll see that the total net position of the town is $51 million, nearly $600,000. And that is all of the town's assets, including its capital assets, all of its town's debt, leading it to be the net position of $51 million. That is also, and I'll take you to page 11, an overall increase from the adjusted amount of $49 million as of the beginning of January. One of the big impacts that's affecting all local municipalities this year is the implementation of what we call GASB 75, where the town was required to adjust its books for the other post-employment liability. That liability is the value of the retirement benefits that have been promised to your current employees and future retirees. And that liability amounted to $8,100,000. That was a big impact on the town's financial statements, and it's a one-time impact. If you took that aside, the town's net position would have increased $1,725,000. So overall, the overall town net position, it decreased, but only because of a one shot. And I think that's
That was a
important.
one-shot deal?
One shot,
Okay.
yes, yes. So then I also want to make comments about your individual funds, which is, and those funds are accounted for on the same basis as you do your budget. So it's a little more easy, I think, for you to relate to it. So, for example, the general fund ended the year with a total fund balance of $3.2 million. And that is an increase over last year of nearly $70,000. Mainly because we repaid transfers that came back from the capital projects fund. The general fund, the part-town fund, total fund balance is $4.9 million. And that was an increase of $640,000. And that was a result mainly of increased sales tax. Your highway fund, while it had a decrease of $176,000, making the fund balance $1.6 million, in the town's budget for the highway, they were planning on using nearly $370,000. So actually, the highway fund did better as well because we didn't use as much fund balance as you originally planned to do so. And then getting back to the financials themselves, there are pages 17 through 42 that explains, they're called the footnotes, and they explain in more detail the pension liability, the OPEB liability, the town's debt. But I want to call your attention to page 51. That gives you on a one-shot page a listing of the town's serial bonds and bond anticipation notes. There you'll see that the town paid off its bond anticipation notes in 2018 by refinancing some of them. The town's overall debt, in terms of its bonded debt, is $25,560,000. And what was going to be due in 2019 is $2,460,000, which is a small increase, $355,000 more due in 19 than in 18. But overall, the town is financing its capital projects using this form of debt so that the taxpayers who are going to benefit from those capital projects are paying for them the same. In other words, the people going forward who are going to benefit from those capital projects will be paying for it in their property taxes. It's an equitable way of financing. And at the end of our financial statement, we include our government auditing standards letter, and that includes the two findings that pertain to the escrows. Those two, quite frankly, have been continuing for several years, a long time, and the town has indicated to us that they're working on improving the accounting for those. So that's an overview of the financial situation for the town for December 31st, 2018. Open to any questions any of the board members and the supervisor have.
So, back to the escrows, Linda, as I
Yes.
understand it, from what you mentioned on page 54, is that during this period of time and up to the time of the audit, as you know, we have applied considerable effort in the reconciliation as escrow accounts, and remember that you had mentioned at one point in time, prior to this administration, there was a lack of reconciliation in
There
excess
were.
of perhaps $300,000.
Yes, that's
And
correct.
that we have now been able to bring that down due to a lot of the efforts of this board and this administration. That's correct?
That's correct.
Okay,
Yes.
thank you.
Thank you.
So just for the record, there's always a challenge with escrows. We're two-year elected officials. Some of these projects are longer than 2 years. there's one of the biggest challenges in this form of government and an award system is having a level of continuity when it comes to administration, right? So I can certainly confirm that it's always been a challenge, but I want to say that there has been a focus on improving the escrow process in the recent 18 months especially. So would it be appropriate for us to provide a response to this audit in that category?
That would be absolutely appropriate, and we can include that
Thank you.
in the final document. Absolutely.
Great.
Okay. What is the timetable going forward with respect to getting this finalized?
We will send out what we call the representation letter tomorrow, and once we have that back, and if you want to include the responses, we
Okay.
can put it through what we call our final QC process and get it out, I would say, by the
Thank
end of
you.
the week.
Okay,
Thank you.
thanks, Lynn.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions from the board members? Okay, thank you. The next item on the agenda is a discussion that Susan Dale will be leading on property maintenance discussions. This is the result of a number of activities that her office and with also Barbara Roberti have been undertaking as we're looking at what we have referred to before as zombie properties, but a significant reduction over the past years. But Sue is going to report on efforts and perhaps make some requests. We do have one resolution for Phyllis Drive for the board, but these other items may also require some additional consideration by the board. Go ahead, Susan.
Hi, hello. So we have 5 properties that have complaints going back to May, June, July. We're constantly sending ordered remedies to cut the grass, final notices to cut the grass, posting it, specifically going out and putting it on the door, taking pictures constantly, and we have a paper trail for each one of these addresses that are listed here. And we respectfully request the town board have a resolution to have our recreation guys go out and mow the lawns. And I know with Jim was working on this too. We've also contacted all the banks that own these properties. We've put in phone calls and we've basically got answers from each one of them that we've called the attorneys for these banks, stating they'll let their clients know about it. And as of today, I had one of my deputies go out and take a picture of each one of these 5 properties, and all of them still have high grass. So it's, people selling their houses in the area. It's an eyesore, obviously, when you drive down the street, it jumps out at you, and we've done everything we could on our end to get the grass cut, short of cutting it ourselves.
What the inspectors reported to me is their concern, several concerns. One is that actually the grass grew so high, it's now bending over, and the concern about varmints or ticks or other, potential diseases, but also as we're entering, it appears a little bit of a dry season, the fire hazard.
Right.
From anything, especially as there's celebrations throughout the summer. And I believe you posted on all of the
Each one of
properties and
our
you sent us
properties, we have
pictures.
pictures of it. You have gotten sent pictures, and as early as today around noon, my deputy went out to each one of these 5 and took more pictures. No changes, not even an attempt.
So, Mr. Oren, what's the next step?
Well, there's a couple of options. The one option is the town can have someone go out and cut the grass, which we've done in the past. So, about 2 years ago, New York State adopted a zombie home property law, which is administered by the New York State Department of Financial Services. And they have a hotline. One of the things I would suggest going forward is that we put the hotline information up on the town website so that residents can reach out directly to New York State, because New York State has an agency that's dedicated to this individually. With respect to that, and one of the things that becomes a challenge for the town is we would have to pay the costs of getting it mowed, whether it's forced labor from the town or hiring somebody from the outside, and then we don't get reimbursed until next year's tax bill. So that's one of the challenges that we have on our part, whereas if, we had contacted the state. The state then uses their efforts to get it done, and if it's not successfully done, we then have the option to go in and do it ourselves, or, levy fines on the banks rather than the property owners. One of the challenges here, two of these properties, the owners are dead. One is in an estate, the other one is not. The other three, I don't know whether or not the owners have totally abandoned the property. So, what winds up happening is whatever costs we incur, we then have to track. We go through a process during the budget cycle to create an assessment roll to put it on the tax bill, and then come January, it would get assessed on the tax bill. And then, assuming the taxes get paid, well, it doesn't matter, we get paid anyway from the county. But, so, the cost factor takes a little bit of time from the town's side. That's the thing that's most complicated on the town's.
But we would be intending to use our maintenance, folks to go out there and cut the grass.
Yeah,
I think
I
it's the
mean-
intention, to
Well,
address that.
when we discussed this the first time a number of years ago, that was the intention, and then what happened was, it became difficult to manage X number of properties with our staff, since we have to do our own blue sky work, if you will. In other words, if they're not mowing our parks, they're
Correct.
mowing the yards, and then the parks get overgrown. So we may want to have a conversation about if we could contract with a landscaper, and I think we've had this conversation before.
We've done that in the past.
We have done that, okay.
Right. And to the extent you don't exceed $35,000 in costs.
Right, so it's easier to
not subject
pay-
to competitive bidding.
Right, it's easier to pay like $40, to have somebody mow the lawn for us than it is to take a crew off of their normal job, in my opinion, to go do somebody's yard. Listen, I'm not an advocate of doing people's yards, but we've been through this before. We were one of the first towns to really grab this by the horn, Sue, you remember this, and create some legislation to have a mechanism. First, it was the unsightly issue, right, post-2007, 2008, where we had a record number of properties. Now, luckily, we're down to like 5, right?
Right, we've
Yeah,
really reduced it
definitely.
significantly.
Which is good, but, we are the Lyme disease capital of,
That's right.
the country here, and we need to be understanding that neighbors are now, and I said this in the email we had the other day.
Right.
Public health, and my colleagues will agree, is at the paramount here, and
Right.
especially when you have properties that have pools. I don't know if any of these do, but we've had that before, where a pool is left to just rot. So whatever we need to do to expedite this, I would support, because government, obviously, the wheels move slowly, and the last thing we want to do is have a solution in September.
I have a question. What do other municipalities do? Because I'm sure we're not the only ones that have this problem. I mean, what does Fishkill do? What does LaGrange do? I mean, they have to address it. Does anybody have any idea? Has anybody reached out to them? Yes.
When I was at the City of Poughkeepsie almost 20 years ago, they did similar what it said. They put it out to bid to get the contractor to do it, and they would find a certain amount plus whatever the cost is that the contractor paid, whether it's to pick up garbage off their property or to cut the grass.
Thank you. Maybe this is something we
You
can
know.
do with this shared service, since we're all going through this.
Well, again, the state has a program in place, and there's fines associated. It's actually in the foreclosure section. It's in Article 13 of the Real Property Action and Procedure Law. So there's and I believe it's a $500 a day fine, which is assessed against the banks. I mean, one of the problems is many of these people
Are gone.
are gone.
Yeah.
So, it's the real lever is the financial institution,
Right.
because at the end of the day, they're the ones who are paying the taxes on
Right.
the property and everything else, so.
But since we've been getting a number of complaints, I think we should move on this.
Well, the DFS, I remember when this came into existence, and that's great, the
They're getting
state.
better.
The state fining the banking institution is great, but the neighbors still have to sit here and deal with the overgrowth. And that's the problem. So, and I don't know how much money we would even get out of the state fines that, not that it's a money thing, but the point is, if we're gonna send personnel out there, we gotta cover our cost on, personnel hours on site. I think Steve Frazier has some input on this.
Yes, Steve, can you?
We, several years ago, we did do this, and what we found is our equipment is large.
Oh, right.
For large parks.
Right.
And doesn't really work well in the small yards. You know, we had trouble doing a number of them because of the size of them, and we couldn't fit through some of the gates that these places
They're on
have.
the residence, right?
And you don't know what's in the grass.
That's the other thing. We also had,
Exactly.
Mess up your,
we had a situation where the grass was so high that the mower couldn't even handle it. You
Right, I
had to-
had to take the tractor over there with the hay mower.
And that's what we are facing.
And then it ends up costing all this money in personnel
And
time.
we never recouped it.
Right, so what I would say, my personal opinion is, if we can entertain what we had done when we had a landscaper,
Yeah, I mean, the order that's drafted, we have the authority to go either way.
And we have a resolution 2019-147 later on, which was mentioned 1 Phyllis Drive, but the idea is we could substitute,
Certainly.
put in these other addresses into that resolution, right, Mr.
Yes,
Rand?
yes.
I would support that.
So when we get to that resolution, we can then talk, further about.
I mean,
each of
the
these
issue with
addresses.
1 Phyllis Drive, the reason why that was
Yes.
separate is because there is not a mortgage on that property. Right. So.
Oh, right, so that's the
So-
non-banking institution.
So that's the non-banking,
Yeah.
so, the Department of, the issue is New York State only has authority over properties that have a mortgage.
Right.
Correct.
In the case of Phyllis Drive, the owners are dead. It's interesting that there was a deck that's,
yeah, they're in violation for other stuff too.
so, but.
So who owns it? There's no estate?
There is an estate.
Oh.
The owners, the owner of the property died, I believe, 2 years ago. I don't know who took care of it last year, but, we can, the other thing is to, for
Well,
purposes of going forward, we need to
Well, we could
contact
see who
whoever.
paid the taxes last year and contact them.
Yeah, I mean, they,
There
again.
is a way.
Assuming they were paid. So,
I guess we don't know.
That would be something that we can look into.
so, but, that's, and the other issue too is I think, going forward, we should at least do a check. There's a hotline that New York State has established, and you can call them up and they will check to see, in the state of New York, in order to start a foreclosure proceeding, or actually to send a notice of default of intent to start a foreclosure action, the bank has to contact DFS. And one of the things that they ask is whether or not the property is occupied or not. So the other thing too is that many times during the foreclosure process, while somebody may be in at the beginning, they leave during the course of the thing
Sure.
once they find someplace else. So it's incumbent on the town to at least reach out. The state has not made it really easy for us to contact them. We've tried it in the past, but it's not, it just, the mechanism is kind of weird. We've reached out to them last year, and it's something they need to work on.
Now, as far as Phyllis Drive goes, is there any way we can get in touch with the surrogates court?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
Because I would
So-
think after 2 years, they got to be close to concluding this matter, I would guess.
I
One would
assume.
think, I mean, unless it's a fairly complicated surrogates court proceeding, I mean, usually those things are fairly
Yeah,
straightforward.
this, like I said, this came down last week, so I've got this, we've got the index number for surrogates court. I requested a copy of the petition, so we'll review that and find out who the administrator is. Technically also, for purposes of the law, where there's a proceeding, the surrogate is appointed as agent for service of process. So at a minimum, we can serve the surrogates court. I believe the obituary for the person who died, the people were either, one person I think was in Albany and another one was in Georgia, of the heirs, so. And then the 43 Kretsch Circle, the property owners are dead, but there's no estate proceeding, it's in foreclosure, and most of these foreclosures are actually proceeding fairly far along, so they're all in the stage where they're close to getting a judgment of foreclosure. So,
Jim, under state law, is there a difference between the mortgage and non-mortgage properties? And the second part is, how can we create a mechanism to expedite this, where it doesn't have to go through the board process and all?
well, actually, first part, the reason for mortgage and non-mortgage property really is because of purposes of the recent amendments to the statute that, where the state created a zombie property unit up in Albany. And they acknowledged that this was an issue. So, you know, technically, none of these liens get to be a lot of money, but if you have a serious condition where there's an unsafe building or something like that, and the town is spending substantial amount of money, there's a requirement that you notice any lien holders on the property. So, because they have an opportunity to participate and get into it, you know, for a couple of $100 on landscaping, they're probably not gonna get involved. But if it's a big amount, they will look at it. We've had a problem I've had problems with clients in other municipalities. One of the things that it's important to note is that when we mow and create charges, we need to record that against the grid file in the property, because when these properties go to sale, which they will probably fairly quickly, we need to have a notation in the file that there is a charge against the property. Because what's happened in the past is, this happened, I believe, in East Fishkill, they didn't have a notice in the file that there was a charge on the property was sold, the new owner bought it. In December, January, there was a lien that came out for costs the prior year, and so now the new owner is, you know, brought a claim with its title company, and the title company now is, I believe, filed the notice of claim against East Fishkill. So, you know, it's important to keep a record of the costs that are associated if they're going to be charged back on the tax bill, because it affects people other than the current owner of the property who isn't there and really doesn't care.
So as long as we can set in place a process, as long as it's followed, then there should be no problem.
Right, and that's what, I mean, the process that's here is copied from New York Town Law 64, and then there's a procedure that, for assessment, that the New York State Office of Real Property Tax Services has recognized. So that's the procedure that we use to draft this law, so that it complies with all the notice requirements. The notice requirements on the front end to get the lawn cut are really not that big a deal. What becomes the challenge at the end of the day is assessing the costs against the property, because typically when it comes time to pay the costs, it's a different owner of the property.
Okay, so when we have the formal resolution, then we can add these properties to it or discuss it further.
Just a question, the town code says that you can't have grass higher than 10 inches, is that correct?
New York State Code, yes.
That's New York State Property Maintenance Code?
That's correct.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Sue.
Thanks, Sue.
Next item is, for discussion, is Deputy Supervisor Kevin Hawthorne is going to present to the board on some items that he's previously talked about relating to Veterans Affairs, some initiatives that he's looked into further.
Thanks.
Good evening. I made a brief outline of each item, and I won't read what you have in front of you.
Thank you.
And I can understand that. I can totally understand that. But there's a background to the pavers. We have pavers, otherwise known as memorial bricks, at the World War II Memorial. They're on the east side. It would be a fantastic idea to duplicate that around the town. I found the name of one company. I recently got the name of the second company. I believe Bill has another company name. So it's in research, and it'll be a fantastic thing for the residents of the town.
And we do have pavers at Sergeant Palmetier, right?
Correct.
For that memorial site.
Yeah, so Sergeant Palmetier, the Schlott House
Right.
Memorial.
Right.
This project you're referring to, I know we talked about this, is going to be for, is it intended to go for out here, or?
Anywhere, actually. You know,
Okay.
we can do it out front here. I'm getting another sample of a brick with lighter lettering. And I'm going to be, well, if you can give me another vendor's name.
Sure.
I'm going to be contacting other vendors, not specifically for cost, because that's really a nit, the cost, but the quality of the bricks, because we don't want them decaying. What we have out at the World War II Memorial are really good bricks, and they're really holding up. What's on the memorial itself is a different story. I think that's subsurface preparation.
Yeah. I agree.
So is that cracking, or what's happening with that, Bill?
Well, the bricks on Memorial themselves are from 1993, too, so the ones that are in front of the memorial are from 2 years ago, I believe. See, time flies. But you're right. I made the mistake of calling these bricks when I was doing the Sergeant Palmetier thing, and whoa, they're not bricks by definition, they're pavers, you know. But really, it comes down to how do you want the name to appear. There's pros and cons, as you know. If you just engrave the name, it lasts forever, but you better have somebody cleaning those out every year because all the dirt gets in and fills them in, right? If you use the black or whatever color writing on top, they don't last forever, especially in direct sunlight, right? So you have to have a mode to maintain those. I'm fully confident that you're doing the research.
Right.
As we discussed,
Yes,
there
ma'am.
are surface covers that you can put on them to preserve the color.
Right,
And
polymers.
exactly, that would meet the elements of this area. So
befo-
that's something that will
Before we do anything,
be,
we'll research it.
right, because
Good.
that's going to be something that's going to have to be ongoing and based on,
And
you
we've
know,
already
needs
had
in it.
requests from residents. As a matter of fact, it's East Fishkill residents would like to put memorial pavers in our areas too.
Yeah, and we've had some other residents that come to my office, that like to expand what they did out at Schlott House as well.
Right, and it's not just for
Yeah.
veterans that have passed.
Right.
It is also veterans that are
Exactly.
serving now. And it's just a really nice way of remembering what they give up for us and what they do for us.
Exactly.
So,
No, it's good that we're creating these initiatives. I mean, obviously, if you drive through East Fishkill, you see how they have those banners for the veterans.
Yes.
So it's good that you're coming up with ideas to do something similar, so I think that's great.
Right.
and it
Yeah.
can also be something we incorporate onto our website, so people
Right.
can
I
also
was
comment
talking with
and
Joe
bring
about
in
that.
things.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we would like to see that before that's implemented too,
Absolutely.
at
Definitely.
least.
The only thing I would say about the bricks, though, is the town itself, if you're planning on selling them, the town itself wouldn't be able to collect the money. We've had third-party entities in the other projects that collected the funds. One of them, obviously, is the Sergeant Palmetier Trust, which is an account that's maintained here in the town. A similar type of trust could be created
Right.
to receive those funds, and then there's a specific accounting process for that.
I think we're just
yeah,
going to check
yeah.
everything out with Jim Haran before we even,
Well, perhaps, there's, as we talk about multiple projects,
Right.
not just these, but some others for veterans, we can create, one, trust, that would be organized to solicit donations for different, activities. So why don't you continue with the
Okay,
next item,
The
Kevin?
second thing is the Veterans Highway. It was an idea that was developed, and Randy Ross and myself went to see Sue Sereno's office, or went to see Sue up at her office, and she wasn't there, but anyhow, her office will contact the state DOT. There was no cost mentioned when I was talking with Lydia Biscup. She mentioned that we would have to more or less personalize the sign relative to Wappinger.
right.
Because just naming it the Veterans Memorial Highway, that's already done on
No, yeah,
84.
you can't do it, right.
The idea came up today to, what I have written there in front of you folks, is Town of Wappinger, Veterans Memorial Highway on Route 9, southern border and northern border. The idea came up today to maybe take the town part, the town of part out, and just make it Wappinger Veterans Memorial Highway. And that might make the village of Wappingers Falls feel much more included.
Okay.
Or just put Wappinger Veterans Highway.
Exactly.
Leave out the memorial, because you
Exactly.
also want to include
Right.
Make it the-
past and present.
If you really want to be
Everything.
inclusive, you could do Wappinger apostrophe S. No, I'm not kidding, because it's all inclusive. It's Wappingers possessive, Wappingers.
But then you stop other areas from wanting to be part of it too. Because you mentioned you had, what, the town of Fishkill, or
No, no,
did you mention?
no, I'm just going from our southern border to our northern border.
Okay, so it's just Wappinger?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Then yes, Bill, it is apostrophe yes.
If it was, if you wanted to, because obviously, if you put town of, right?
Right.
You're kind of inadvertently excluding the village.
Right.
Or you
Even
could just say
though
Wappingers Falls Veterans Highway.
Only a third of the village, Bill.
2/3 of them.
You could say Wappingers Falls Veterans Highway. You could do
Well, that
too.
wouldn't be,
No,
that
then
wouldn't be
That would exclude
accurate.
the town.
Just
I like the
Wappinger.
Wappinger plus.
Wappinger apostrophe, it's like,
Yeah.
this is Wappingers apostrophe S, Veterans Highway. We also happen to have on the rail trail, the, Veterans
Yes.
Memorial Mile, which just happens to be in the town of Wappinger.
Yeah.
So that already exists. This could be the highway portion of this. I like how we're kind of creating a branding effort
And that's
here.
the idea, and by the way, Kevin and Randy had gone and beautified that part on the rail
Rail
trail.
trail? Oh,
Yeah,
great.
putting a lot of flowers and decoration out there to make it look nice from a seasonal point of view.
It's gonna be even better if you're familiar with the Rose of Sharon. We have a Rose of Sharon behind one of the memorial stones at the Dayton Road end.
Really? Okay.
And come the spring, boy, that's gonna be something to look
Yeah,
at.
but
Wow.
you have to be careful to prune those babies,
Well,
they get
Well, if
big.
you want more, I know where you can get a lot of freebies,
Yeah.
a lot of it,
We
mine too.
we have our resident botanist
Yes.
as town supervisor.
Yes.
Just follow his Facebook page if you want to learn about how to prune things.
Well, I see in your proposal, you do have something about including Wappingers Falls in there.
Exactly.
Oh, I have them all.
Okay.
Yeah, taking out the town of.
It's
I think-
But I think it's a, great idea. Is the idea then to get, arms that go onto the utility poles, or what are you thinking as far as banners or flags, or what is it?
That's addressed later.
Okay.
Before you move on to the next thing, though,
Yes.
relative to this, just so I understand it, we can't officially name it this because there's already an existing Veterans Highway, right?
On
Which
84. 84.
Which the state, by state
Yeah, yeah.
proclamation, they named that. So basically, we're ceremoniously creating this for our town, correct?
Correct.
Okay, I like that. Thank you.
Yeah.
Do we need any kind of approval from state DOT?
They're the ones who are gonna be giving us the signs.
Okay.
So Senator Serino's office is going to be
Okay.
coordinating on that.
And Lydia already spoke with the DOT.
Okay.
So they're totally on board.
Right.
Oh, great.
Yes,
Good.
Yeah.
even better than that.
Yeah.
Good.
The idea came up to form veterans committees. The idea also came up to name that advisory groups. Have a veterans advisory group, which is something that they do in East Fishkill. I don't know anything about how it's structured, but it's a really fine way. You can see what I've put in front of you, that there are a number of objectives. And just to get a bunch of veterans, say VFW, and I'm sure the Rotary has some veterans, and the American Legion Post. We know there's many. And I think that, well, there's also the DAV at Castle Point. So we could get an awful lot of veterans, and I know that there are an awful lot of veterans who are interested in doing something like this.
Civil
Yeah, so
aviation
there's-
patrol.
Yeah, we can,
And I've
a lot of
met,
avenues.
in the process of gathering signatures, I met a lot of veterans who just want to get involved.
Right.
They want something to do.
Okay.
Great.
Flag disposal mailboxes is the next thing. We did that in East Fishkill. I made a mailbox with the American Legion. It's in their town hall. Come to find out, there's probably one at WT Garner, or possibly. There's probably one at the VFW. They're old reclaimed mailboxes. So we don't need to reinvent the wheel. What I talk about and what I've put in front of you is coordinating that effort. And going just a little bit further in a flag disposal, what they call a burn pit.
Right.
It'd make a great Boy Scout
Right.
thing. I don't know what the VFW and if it's WT Garner, I don't know what they do with their flags. We all know that the proper way to dispose of the flags is
Right,
burning.
burn it.
Right.
And that would include the faded flags, the ripped
Right.
flags, and just the ones that are unserviceable.
I think
What happened-
Fishkill does that, they have it out on their website, a certain day, this is when we're doing it, bring your
Right,
flags.
yeah, June 14th.
Right, and
Yeah, flag
it
day.
was a great notification that went out to all the residents. You know, it wasn't on Facebook or anything, it was actually their website, and it broadcasted it out. So, and a lot of people saw it, and they're like, wow, that's great, and they dropped them off there. So if we could implement something
Right.
like that, that would be
Yes.
What
very
happens
good.
every year, Bill, when they take down the flag at the memorial site at Slaughterhouse? Right, because they replace that
The fire
every year.
department-
Yeah.
Department does that.
I believe they have a dignified burning of the flag.
Okay.
Or one of their members brings it to one of these organizations.
Right.
There are Boy Scout troops that do this on an annual basis. I'm not sure which troop locally has done it, but I think they're on the eastern side of the town. I know that the Boy Scout troop that we just chartered has asked if anyone on this side of town does it, so I can put you in contact with them, and if they're, you know, if they have, I don't think they have a place to burn flags, but I would certainly support if we were gonna do a dignified flag burning. It's obviously, it's something that is exempt from any open burning laws, obviously, because it's a ceremonial thing, but I wouldn't have an objection to doing that on a town property, wherever's appropriate, and have the Boy Scouts be there to assist.
Exactly. One thing that we would need to be careful of, and we found that out in East Fishkill, I hate to keep going back to East Fishkill, but hey, the artificial flags, the polyester flags, give off toxic smoke.
Yeah.
So what East Fishkill has started doing, and I don't know how much better this is, bringing up to the Dutchess County Resource Recovery Agency for them to burn. But I also heard that that creates a layer of smog, some
wow,
serious
okay.
thick smoke. So that's something that I want to look into.
Okay.
Another good place to put the flag for people to dispose of flags is at the recycling center. And put a little bin there and say, hey, you
Oh,
know,
that'd be great.
that's a lot of residents go there, they dispose of things and say, hey, I can bring my flag here.
Probably a good percentage of the people in the town go there,
Right.
and be a good way to spread the patriotism.
I think that would be great. We have one location, and periodically, we'll have somebody collect them all, and then we'll do the burn.
I have no objection.
Okay.
Terrific. Okay, the very nearly last thing is the Hometown Heroes Project. That is the banners that you see in Beekman, possibly the town of Poughkeepsie, definitely Kingston, because that's where it originated in New
Yeah.
York State.
That's nice.
Junior young lady from Jay went up to visit her grandfather, and she saw those. She brought it back down to Hopewell, and they instituted it there. They do $75 a side of each banner. They use star printing. They picked out a template, which is totally open to discussion, and they request a photo. My photo is a boot camp photo, and the light is shining like this, and my eyebrow is arched, and I'm giving it the hairy eyeball. Not a pretty picture, but my grandchildren love it. Anyhow, it's something that the guidance counselor at Ketchum, Kayla Boscia, I spoke with her, mentioned Hometown Heroes. She was going to get it going in the town of Poughkeepsie. Now, they were using Ortiz for their brackets. He was making the brackets. I come to find out that there were some defects in the brackets. Kayla was finding another welder to make those brackets. So I'm going to do some scouting around and find out what the costs are, all that, and I hope to get that done with the Veterans Advisory Committee.
The other place I just thought of would be a good place to put memorials and things is at the Carnwath Farms. In fact, I thought somebody came up and mentioned that, I think it was
Right.
Mr.
Very good.
Incarnato, that, you know, that would be an ideal place.
Well, what we're
also.
starting on that at the request of actually the county,
Yeah.
and Joe is also spearheading it as
That's
well, is to
great.
have put the veterans, put a veterans museum
Yeah.
out there, you know, for the
Which would be
county out
great.
there. So that's
Yeah.
one thing where over Community Day, we'll start exploring
That's
further.
Very good.
very important.
All right,
And I
that's
think they'd
all I
like it.
have.
Just a question for you,
Yes, sir.
and I might have missed it because I was reading when you were speaking, I apologize. besides the area of Carnwath, was there a specific area you were focusing on for hanging these banners in the town, or was it going to be?
All right, what we would do is we would contact Central Hudson and find out what polls they would authorize.
Okay,
I found out from the town of Poughkeepsie, they have no druthers. You can pick whatever polls you want. I kind of doubt that. In East Fishkill, they got a hold of Central Hudson and they designated exactly what polls and the height off of the ground as well.
So it's
I
going to
think
be
that's-
based on the model like East Fishkill, when you drive by East Fishkill?
Exactly.
Yeah,
Exactly.
okay.
right.
I don't know, I think the town of Beekman, well, obviously the town of Beekman is separate from the town of East Fishkill. I was driving out to Beekman, out towards Portland, and I noticed that Beekman has them too. So that's another resource that I can check to see exactly what they've done to institute that
You
program.
know, it's
Jessica,
nice.
you had a question.
Another place that might be very appropriate for them is we own all of the light poles going into Robinson Lane,
Yeah.
the baseball complex, and that gets a lot of traffic through there in the summer.
Yeah.
And those are ours, so.
But it's seasonal too, that's the other thing, it's seasonal. It's,
Well,
you
they,
need something,
what
it's
they
a great
do-
idea, but
What they do in the off-season is they put them on the walls. They have some sort of.
we
hanging
talked about that too. We
facility,
could
right.
implement things here in
I
town
think they
hall.
may recycle them, you know, if they have 500 banners, if we have 500 banners,
Yeah.
we're gonna have to recycle them, so that would be something for our Veterans Advisory
Right.
Committee to
And
handle.
if you have a museum, that might be a good place to put them.
And we can
Yes.
even put it in here too. I mean, if we're gonna have an outreach,
So,
an outpouring.
a lot of people
Okay.
happy.
Yeah, no, a lot of
Yeah.
good ideas, so, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
What about, since you're up here, what about ServPro?
ServPro, that was I didn't bring anything with me to hand out, but I know it like the back of my hand.
This is what you had discussed before with the board.
Right. It was March of 2017. There were vents that were cleaned, 5 vents. The ServPro people, the insurance company used another investigative company, and they found that only 2 vents really needed to be cleaned, and this was after the fact. So the bill came to $19,500. The Marshall and Sterling company that they used paid $7,800. So we had $7,800, we have to make up the balance and give, we should give ServPro a check for the full thing.
Yeah, well, there's an
There's a
outstanding
resolution.
invoice from
Is that-
earlier this year as well.
That's the resolution that we have here. Okay.
Yeah, that's the last page, it was the
Gotcha.
19,500.
So what's the net?
that I sent you.
Do we know?
And a lady by the name of Liz Jenks, I believe her name is, she's been extremely patient, so.
So we,
So 11,700?
all right, move.
Well, no, we're gonna have, don't we have a resolution later on with this, or we could do it?
No, I think it's,
Oh,
there's not a resolution
Oh,
in
it's not in
place
the-
later on.
Because I
Yeah.
thought I saw it as
Is there?
2019-153.
Yeah.
I think.
Oh, that's duct cleaning, yes, that's correct, that's
So
ServPro.
we
Yeah,
could
so we'll
with
do that
though.
then.
Yeah.
Correct,
I rescind my
Thank you.
motion.
yes.
I thought it was just on the table.
Sure, come on up.
When Kevin and I started discussing the title of what the road was going to be called, the English teacher in me thought it had to be apostrophe S, Veterans. We did a lot of research. There was a town outside of Oneonta that tried to do it with apostrophe S, and the DOT came down on them and made them take the signs down. The DOT would like veterans without any apostrophe.
Right, I was referring to Wappingers.
Wappingers. It would be Wappingers apostrophe S.
Oh, I'm
Veterans,
sorry.
yeah.
That's
just-
okay.
Duh.
Just in an effort
It's
to be
okay.
inclusive of the village and the town.
Right.
Without having to make more words,
Yeah.
right?
Okay.
Right.
But now I hear what you're saying, but Wappingers, Veterans, Highway.
So presumably that they'll,
So it would be
So,
apostrophe S. Wappingers
Possessive
apostrophe.
Right.
plural highway.
yeah,
Okay, good.
There you go.
okay.
Thank you,
I
though.
hope I'm grammatically correct.
No, you are.
Okay.
Okay, so, now we'll, thank you, Kevin, for that. The next item will be other discussions, and Jessica, please give us a report a preliminary report, really, on Community Day.
This is the first of what will probably be 2 reports on Community Day. By the time we get to our next meeting, I'll have the full accounting, all the bills will be paid, things like that. It was a wonderful experience for me. It was a great learning experience for me doing this 3 days. there is a lot of things that, we're going to take for next year into consideration. I can tell you, I heard a lot of great things on site from residents. Apparently, we've had the best fireworks display that some people, they told us, have seen in decades. So that was very exciting to hear. It was also very exciting to hear from people how many different places you could see it from. The former supervisor, who was the grand marshal in our parade, watched it from her front porch. She said that
Wow.
she said it's a change. She goes, I used to have to watch it from my back porch, but now I have to watch it from my front porch. So that was a very interesting comment to hear from her. The 3-day model, we got a lot of good advice from our carnival company in terms of some time changes for next year that we're very seriously taking into consideration. But other than that, we had a very successful event for having to compete with heat in the high 90s and a midday rainstorm on Saturday. That was right after our parade. So I want to most importantly thank everyone who helped us put that together. It was a large group of people. We did it in rapid order, once we got all of our final approvals, and we had so many volunteers, our committee, and town employees out there helping us. So I just want to say we couldn't pull it off without them. What questions
Okay,
do we have
thanks.
for the first round?
So, thank you for your hard work. This was the first year we had this model, right? So obviously, we're going to learn from different things such as timeline, momentum. The weather actually, to be honest with you, the weather actually
It
wasn't
held
bad.
pretty well.
It held off. We were very lucky. Just look at what happened in the town of Red Hook. It was a stormy day in most of the county, believe it or not.
Yeah.
The thunder that we heard during your award ceremony, supervisor, was in Hopewell. We were actively monitoring that.
Right.
The ride boss had to shut the rides down just based on protocol, but the storm stayed away from us for that presentation. What I think we should do, just to be proactive, is outside of a normal town board meeting, do a SWOT analysis and
Right.
look at
Exactly.
the strengths and weaknesses, opportunities and threats overall on a 3-day model. It's totally different than a 1-day model. We learned that, right?
Yep.
But I will tell you that I have a positive feeling about what we experienced in the past 3 days. I've been very critical of this event for the last number of years. Anyone that has attended meetings can attest to that. I'm not critical because I'm trying to find negativity. I'm critical because I think we can always do better, right? And I think that we can continue to do better. So with that flavor, I think as a board, I think the board was more involved than we previously have been.
That's correct.
I think
Very
that,
much so.
we had more boots on the ground. I understand as Robbie said before, we were shorthanded. These are things that we write down now, right? Before we forget, we write these things down, we identify where those gaps were and how we can change things to keep the flow going
Right.
a little bit better. So just for the record, I just want to thank you for your hard work, but I will say you definitely were overwhelmed at times, okay? I'm not trying to fault you,
No.
but we need to find a better process to ensure that we are duplicating the efforts so that things are getting done more efficiently in some aspects, right? It's hard to get to the beginning of the parade and then to the end of the parade within 30 seconds. Somehow you did it, but
And I screamed, "The parade is coming," the entire way
and you made it.
down there.
But we had some challenges relative to lineup, which we did not anticipate. And, you're going to have these challenges, I think.
Right.
I think you're going to have these challenges. So we'll talk more, outside this format. But I just want to stress the fact that I have a positive feeling. The fireworks, that was a 21 or 22-minute show that
Yeah.
I had residents that live in the village go out of their way to say that that was incredible.
Yeah.
So
And the number of
Appreciate
people
it.
that came back was very impressive. I mean, of course, around 4 o'clock, the place cleared with the downpour, But the number of people who started streaming in before those fireworks, I mean, I was excited.
Well, that was the thing that we talked about even back in 2012, was that it's sort of like a mixed bag, because when you have a summer type of event, sometimes it gets very hot that people don't want to be around during the day, but at night, it gets nicer and cooler. Whereas in September, when we had a community day, sometimes those days tend to be much colder, rainier. So I think that when we had the event back in 2012, we had a very good showing for fireworks as well. So I wasn't surprised that a lot of people came back for the fireworks based upon the fact that it was during a certain time during the year where at night the weather is a little bit more temperate.
And there are some things we can do, some simple things we can do
Yeah.
to keep momentum there after the parade, and not have some of the dead, you're gonna have dead time anyway if you
Yeah.
have 8 hours between the, the parade and the fireworks. So
Exactly.
there's some simple things, and I know that the supervisor spoke to the Midway boss who does this every weekend, and you probably did too. And he, from what I understand, was very helpful in providing some
And
professional
continue to be.
insight.
And actually, some of the vendors who have been doing this will also have event planners in their group. So I've already started the process of what I call lessons learned, and have been getting some good input, with respect to that. I do want to just add again, thanks to everyone who's involved. We had 14 staff from the town hall, that were involved. I have the list, and what I'd like, just to get the board's general consent for me to write a note of appreciation to each one of them. We had 6 other volunteers that aren't associated other than by relationship or friendship to the town. Recreation Committee, we had 5 individuals that were participating. RC Ketchum Interact Club, we had 7, and then, of course, there was the members of the board and some other friends, including on audiovisual equipment and so forth, that we had a lot of help. So altogether, over 30 people, were involved. But I think Randy was correct that we still could use more people, to volunteer.
And it was interesting being at a new site, the places where you really thought you needed a lot of people turned out to manage themselves a little better.
Right.
And then you were surprised by some things where you did feel understaffed.
Yeah, no, and definitely the Recreation Committee was definitely one of the cornerstones. I mean, I know myself, being there Saturday and Sunday, I saw the hard work that Randy did, Rob Wilson did, people like Bruce Lustig. I mean, I'm not going to go through over all the names, but them in particular, I did notice, but all of them did a tremendous job. I know Donna was out there. I mean, just so many people
Absolutely.
played a role in making this a
30.
successful event. So, I mean, I do want to make sure that they are recognized, because I realize that it's a beautiful Independence Day weekend. There are plenty of things that people could be doing, but the fact that they took their time and efforts out to help us make this event successful really makes me feel proud to be a member of this town, and thankful that they're willing to do that.
Oh, yeah, and the sacrifices are made,
Yeah.
were tremendous.
So whatever the supervisor feels
Right.
appropriate to send to the individuals, I obviously support that. I also think we should send a letter from the town of Wappinger to the village of Wappingers Falls.
And the school
Absolutely.
district.
And the school district. I think we need a letter that hits the record of the village board and mayor, they can read off. I think the Wappinger Central School District Board of Trustees should receive a letter that they can read into the record. Without those 2 entities, we could not have done this. The village originally had advised us they would have 2 police officers available. We know it's difficult to fund things. It's difficult to get people to sign up for shifts on that weekend. They had 5 police officers during the parade, and they were still handling an emergency at the same time as the parade. So that was not easy for them to do. So I would.
Well,
I would
all of
ask-
our first responders that participated,
Oh, absolutely.
really, gave a lot of their time and
I
energy.
agree. The Houstonville Fire Department obviously marched in the parade and then came back and assisted with EMS.
Yep.
MSTAR Town of Wappinger Ambulance also had units there. The New York State Police. That's
correct.
I got to give a shout out to Captain DeCordo, who was able to find 3 troopers to assign specifically to this event to ensure that before, during, and after the fireworks, we didn't have any traffic issues going out of the property.
And we had the full coverage of MSTAR.
Yes.
That helped out.
So those entities should be thanked for their service on this inaugural event. And also, I only had a few minutes on Sunday before I had to get to Hamilton on Broadway, which was great. But I did stop by, and Duchess Cruisers should get a letter or a certificate or something,
Oh, they
because
were amazing.
they ran that car show. They had so many cars show up.
We had over 40.
I
Yeah.
mean,
Over
it was
40
it was a detour. All right, we'll just put it that way.
Yeah, and.
Which we love to talk about.
Yeah, no, there was no, I don't know what you're talking about. And a lot of that car show, the hard work that went into it, it was Donna.
Well, Donna,
Yeah,
let me just say this one last thing.
yeah.
Donna has been a little bit under the weather, obviously. We've talked about this publicly. For her to not only attend this entire event,
Oh, gosh,
okay?
yes.
She didn't know that it was me driving by, but she was doing traffic control under an umbrella in
Yes.
85-degree weather
Yep,
under her own initiative to make sure somebody didn't drive through the middle of the cars that were set up. And we'll talk about a better way to set up the cars at a later
Yeah.
time, but she took it upon herself to stand there for hours on end with no communication.
Yeah.
And we know that she has had some challenging health issues.
Plus the knee surgery.
And the knee surgery. So, just for the record, and I'm
Right.
sure my colleagues will agree, Donna, thank you so much for going above and beyond on this event.
Yeah, and I
know
just
she's
want to add
watching,
to that. I
so.
want to, and Donna, if you're watching, I mean, we've worked together for many years on recreation. I know that this is just one minor example of the ways you've gone above and beyond to make sure that these
Absolutely.
events are successful. So even though your efforts may be unsung, they're not unnoticed, and we thank you for it.
But also other personal things, like with Robbie, he opened up his swimming pool to the Carney
Yeah.
folks, and they were very appreciative.
I didn't know we were going to discuss that on the record, but.
yeah, but that's like the,
I want to make sure that Robbie is recognized, as well, so.
No, I'm kidding, but talk about above and beyond.
Yeah.
I'm not sure how that happened, but Rob Wilson from the Recreation Committee had a pool party with the Carnies.
twice.
Which, I mean, you can't ask anybody to do that,
Yeah, I'm not even going to go there with that.
but we appreciate it.
Yeah. Okay. Very good, yes. And they were talking about it the whole time.
It's
Oh,
little
they
things
loved
like
it.
that make
Yeah.
them want to come back.
Well, that's what Steve said, is running the Carnies.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Jessica.
All right,
Thank you
thank
very
you.
much. Next item is, we're going to talk a little bit, and I'm going to ask Tim Moot to address the Chelsea boat ramp. As you know, we had looked at how do we get that up and running, and actually, we do have a solution now, and subject to Steve being able to get out there, we're going to be able to get that online. There's a temporary solution, and that will, Tim, you can introduce, but myself and Tim and others, Steve, we went down there, met with the Chelsea Yacht Club, and, had a very good discussion, a very cooperative discussion. So hopefully without much longer time going away, we will get that, ramp and the dock up. But Tim, why don't you share with the board what we're
Sure,
looking
so
at?
we met with Steve Parker, he's the Commodore, a couple members of his committee. We kind of went over the site and explained some of the issues that we were experiencing in trying to align this boat ramp. So a couple elements, there's some safety fence that protects their yacht yard, so they're gonna have to move that back. It's like sort of leaning and kind of precarious in the area that we want to put the ramp. So as of today, they committed that they're gonna move their fence back out of the way. They'll try to target that this weekend, weather permitting, and we're anxious to see as soon as when Steve can get out to, once that fence is out of the way, put the dock in. My understanding is the dock is like a ramp, and then there's two floating parts to it. I think we can install one of the floating parts that'll get us slightly around the corner, and then we'll be able to assess the front bulkhead and hopefully, do some quick repairs so that the third piece of the floating dock can be installed. So all that will be quote-unquote temporary. I mean, it's some simple things that can happen within the next 2 weeks, say. And then from there, we worked with Mr. Rand looking at the land use, the boundary, and so a bigger, more permanent project would be looking into what kind of land use we would have legally if we have to acquire or get a permanent easement. And then we could look at some design options and also look at rolling some of this work into the LWRP, which you mentioned, and try to capture maybe, the costs that could be related to.
And one of the
a
items of
permanent
the
fix.
3 additional ones on the agenda is a waterfront grant that would enable us to, especially since we're going to have a temporary solution and a longer-term solution, and help fund part of that as well. So we'll talk about that in a little bit. So initially, a temporary solution that will help address getting that open, and then a longer term, which will actually remediate it and, make it, look a lot more nice, so, and usable. So, thank you. The next item, and also I asked Mr. Moot to talk about the Wildwood connection to Tri-Municipal.
Right, so we worked to apply for a grant through the state EFC, Environmental Facilities Committee, back in 2018. I think Scott Williams with the village is part of the main grant administrator part. I think January, we got a notice that the grant was awarded, $2.5 million. So we've had a couple conference calls with EFC since, I'd say, when I started getting involved with the town, which is like April maybe. And so they're looking to really, the state, advance this application to commit the funding. And so they've given us sort of a checklist of things that really need to be solidified now so that this closing of the finance can occur. And so a couple of things that are on the resolution tonight would be our engineering agreement. They need a resolution and an authorization for engineering services. What that does then is precipitate us as the engineers to solicit minority women-owned businesses or certain other financial project requirements that have to be accommodated. So once we have our contract in place with the town, we can then turn and contract with these other firms. And this is like a major requirement. I think it's a 30% requirement, MWBE. There's other things, I don't have the whole checklist in front of me, but I think, Jim and I were going back and forth, and he's got it, basically in the resolution as to, we're gonna focus on just the Wildwood piece. There's the Woodhill Green piece, which is a separate component to this, but based on the legalities of adding that, which is out of district, that's another component that needs to be ironed out.
Because we have the water and sewer components, so actually what we'll talk about in a little bit too is both the water and sewer. What we've been awarded is with respect to the sewer, and which will ultimately result in the decommissioning of the Wildwood plant. Then the water also will be addressing, there's two elements to that, for the board. One is with respect to ultimately, Woodhill Greens water, and then we have a separate one, which we have a resolution, and Jim will talk about as far as the intermunicipal agreement, phase one of that agreement, which is going to be the interconnection point between the town and the village. And part of that is for their, backup and reserves, if, let's say, they had to drain their tanks or they had a major fire, heaven forbid, or, and also for our backup emergency where we could be tapping into their water. So we're going to be talking about that in a few minutes as far as that element, goes. So what I intend to do for the board is in our August meeting, when we meet on August the 5th, one is Frederick will be giving us a 6-month review of where we are on the financial condition, but also, will be a good, result. But also have a workshop that Tim and Tom Harvey and so forth will be talking about for some of these projects. We looked at, 7, what the cost would be associated with that, including, whether or not it comes out of one of our funds, or intention to bond, actually a combination of those. But we'll have a workshop, a public workshop in August, meeting in connection with Frederick's review of the financial condition of the town as a result of the first 6 months. So that will be coming along next month. Okay?
So, Mr. Super, I believe with respect to the Wildwood water treatment facility, a wastewater treatment facility, last year, as a condition for applying for the funding, we adopted bond resolutions.
Correct.
So there are bond resolutions that are in place that Doug Goodfriend prepared.
Correct.
Which contemplate, the way, when there's grants that are in play, you adopt a bond resolution for what's the maximum cost without a grant.
Correct.
And then it would be, the amount you borrow would be reduced by whatever grants are received. I believe, so right now, we've got certain grants and EFC funding contemplated for this portion. There's also additional grant applications that's going to be going in for this year's consolidated funding application, which potentially could reduce the cost for the Wildwood replacement even further. and also make it more affordable for people in Woodhill Green.
Correct.
So,
So we have
there's that.
basically the Woodhill Green water and sewer that we're looking at. The
Well-
local government efficiency grant that will help contribute toward that, and that's, basically $400,000, dollars on that one. There's a water quality improvement, which is part of this, what we've been discussing, and then there's the local waterfront revitalization program that we'll talk about. In addition, though, as we'll hear, tonight on one of the resolutions relating to the HVAC system, which is, Steve is just barely keeping it together with the Band-Aids, at this point in time. And so that, we're going to have a proposal right now, when we get to that, it will be, Frederick said initially, will be coming out of the A fund, balance, but that's where we also will want to have an intention to bond and how we work that with the other bonding mechanisms, but we'll come back to that shortly. Okay, so I think, Tim and CPL and Jim Horan have been putting a lot of work into these efforts to find a way that we can get a number of these things done in the most cost-effective and without impacting the tax cap issue. So we'll come back to those. So thank you, Tim, for that. We'll move into the resolution portion of the meeting, Resolution 2019-144, and this will be a resolution accepting a performance agreement secured by letter of credit for the Fernia subdivision. This is in the form of an irrevocable letter of credit in the amount of $260,640. And Mr. Horan has reviewed the documents. Jim, would you like to comment on it first?
So this is a new subdivision which was recently approved by the planning board. It's off a new Hackensack Road. It's actually just adjacent to the property, the Red Cedar, the area next to Red Cedar, which was just rezoned. It's on the west side, I guess, northwest side of New Hackensack. So this is a performance bond to, a letter of credit, I should say, to ensure that the developer builds the road. There's one road, it's a cul-de-sac, I believe it's 9 lots. So this would be a letter of credit that ensures that the roads will be completed, all the utilities be constructed properly. Here, there's a water main that's going to be dedicated to the town, as well as certain drainage improvements. So those are all covered under the bond, the letter of credit, which we will then hold until the project is completed.
Okay. Any other questions?
No, I'll move it.
Second.
Okay, all in favor? Aye. Any nays or abstentions? Seeing none, the motion passes. The next item is Resolution 2019-145. This is part of the ongoing process to get caught up and reconcile with respect to our escrows. This is a resolution authorizing a refund of escrow held for seeding and stabilization at 40 Pasadena Court. This is the amount of $1,500.
I'll move it.
Second?
All in favor? Aye. Any nays or abstentions? The motion passes. Resolution 2019-146 is a resolution authorizing a refund of escrow held for final driveway construction at 154 All Angels Hill Road, and this is the amount of $2,500.
I'll move it.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Any nays or abstentions? This motion passes. The next one is Resolution 2019-147. This is related to what we were discussing earlier. It's a resolution ordering the abatement of property maintenance violations at 1 Phyllis Drive, but also I think we want to, Jim, as a way to incorporate the other 4 into this resolution, or do we need separate resolutions?
We could just add them to this resolution, and then I'll prepare the respective orders for the additional properties.
So to add them, it would be, for the record, Mr. Town Clerk, would be 43 Kretsch Circle, 33 Pie Lane, 83 Helen Drive, and 196 Widmer Road, added to the 1 Phyllis Drive.
And Bill, to your question before, the taxes have not been paid on that house.
Okay.
And we will then also follow up with the recommendations of council as to notifying the state and, putting in a mechanism for doing this on an ongoing basis.
And again, if the state gets the banks to be out there and mow the lawn, then, we don't have to do it.
All is
So,
good, right?
This resolution requires the town supervisor of buildings and grounds to dispatch workers to the property. I'm not sure that's the best approach.
I think in light of our earlier
I think, is
discussion.
there an alternative on that?
What I would say is, I would offer to amend the resolution under sub 1. The town board of the town of Wappinger hereby directs that the supervisor of buildings and grounds dispatch workers to the property to cut the grass and weeds as soon as possible, or contract with a local landscaper for the purposes of doing such.
I'll second that amendment.
Actually, correction,
Sure.
sub 2 includes that.
So,
Strike-
well,
strike
it says if he's unable to mow, but I think your proposal is probably a better one, leaving it, either or.
All right, then just,
that way.
okay, strike 2 and just leave what I just offered.
Right. Yeah.
And I second that amendment.
Okay. Jim, any thoughts on that approach?
No, you know,
Okay.
the reason why it was drafted that way, because in the past, he didn't have, the manpower available, so. that was-
Okay. So we have a motion and second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any nays or abstentions? The motion passes. The next item is Resolution 2019-148. This is a resolution awarding the contract for Town Hall HVAC upgrades. The bid was opened, and, I'll have Mr. Moot talk about it, but it's a total of, $1,129,000 for the HVAC system. Added to that will be for electrical work, and this is $94,500. And as I mentioned earlier, Frederick, I talked with him earlier, said initially it would be a loan from the general aid fund, balance, A0917, with the intention to bond some or all of that, particular amount. That would be the standard resolution we've had for intention to bond. The A fund balance today is mid-year at 3.1 million, with still revenue to be coming in. Jim, do you have some comments?
In the past, some of the intention to bond resolutions that we did were done primarily because we were not aware of the costs at the time. In this case, I think if the board intends to bond, I think the appropriate thing would be to adopt a bond resolution as soon as possible, rather than an intent to bond resolution. We can, award the bid, process the information from the contractor, and hold off signing it until we adopt the bond resolution. But with respect to the bond resolution, if a bond resolution is for a period of less than 5 years, is not subject to permissive referendum. If it is longer than 5 years, then it would be subject to a 30-day permissive referendum period, which would delay the borrowing. So, but again, in this case, there's, contemplated, you can always have the loan out. That's outstanding. I don't believe that this would be subject to a permissive referendum, but the bonds can't be issued until the permissive referendum period would pass, should the board wish to borrow for a period longer than 5 years.
Well, we will have a board meeting on August the 5th, and as I mentioned, we'll have both the
Discuss this.
controller and we'll be discussing other things. So if we want to have a resolution, as I understand from Mr. Horan, authorizing the award of the bid, but we would hold off and start all that process going, but hold off on the actual execution of the contract until August 5th meeting.
So we can go forward with this?
Yeah, we can start going forward with it, is what I understand. Mr. Mood, is that something
Yeah,
that's
we
workable?
could give a letter, notice of intent to award and get going with bonds and insurance, and get everything ready so that it'd be in place by that meeting, so.
Mr. Field?
This is a $1.1 million
Right.
HVAC upgrade.
Basically, it's
That's
gutting
it.
it and
I mean-
putting a new system.
I'd feel a little more comfortable having the vendor come in here and give us a presentation on what that upgrade is going to include. That's a significant expense. And I'm not prepared to even entertain financing $1.1 million on July 8th. Is that what it is today?
Yes, it's July 8th.
Because we're still halfway through the year. So I understand it's something we need to move on because it takes time to get this done, and I just would feel more comfortable if we had, is it appropriate to move ahead with this resolution and then have the vendor come in and give us a 15-minute discussion of what this work includes?
Well, we had all the specs outlined in the bid documents.
we designed
It was-
everything,
They
so-
designed it, and it was all detailed as to what is going to be done. And maybe you can summarize it.
Well, I know, I'm not an HVAC guy, but based on what my discussions were, and it was relative to the extreme low bidder that got thrown out, but there are several fan heads, like units across the roof system, and then there's also, what we have is a energy recovery ventilation part of this deal. So those two components added up, to the equipment costs of replacing everything in the building. I think the way we looked at it initially was your HVAC does two things, right? It cools and it heats. So we looked at what is our interpretation of the ability of your system to cool versus heat. And I think the concern is, as we're seeing, it can kind of keep up now with the cooling, but our concern was it's on the brink of probably not making it, or not making it without problems through the heating season.
Well, even the cooling, there's issues. Steve Fraser, you can comment on it. And part of it, too, is where the parts for maintenance are no longer there.
Right, the current system we have is the original system, and since then, they have come up with another gas that is used, and it's not compatible with the equipment that we have. So through the years, parts for the old style compressors and such have been becoming harder and harder to find. It's new old stock, they aren't manufacturing it anymore. And when we had we ended up having a catastrophic failure of the unit for the building department, and there was no replacement parts available. We had to upgrade that at that point. And that's almost the situation we're at with the current, with the remaining of the system. On a daily basis, I don't know, what's going to happen with it.
You had to previously upgrade the court as well, correct?
That was done, previously.
Previously as
Yeah.
well.
Now, the court, we used Mitsubishi's, right?
Correct.
So that's a separate system.
Correct.
This system that we're looking at is using the same equipment that exists with the exception of the fans and things like that? Are we still using baseboard? Are we using, are we heating the hallways? Are we doing anything like that?
The hallways currently have no heat source. And this would add heat to the hallways with what they call cassettes. They're small heat exchange units or cooling exchange units with a built-in blower. And each unit calls to the main compressor for the gas or the heat, so that it has more control of the heat throughout the building. You won't have the hot and cold zones that we have currently. It's also more efficient because of that feature. It only calls for the amount of cooling or heat that the building actually needs. Currently, we don't have that.
Does this include new thermostats?
Correct. All new
Controls.
controls,
New
which
controls.
through the years have been bypassed here. I have no control of heat or cooling. It's either on or it's off.
So they'll put new ductwork in for the hallways?
Excuse me?
Will there be new ductwork put into the hallways for those heat?
I believe
Air
it's
conditioning?
not new ductwork, it's the
I think
cassettes
they're,
will take over.
I think they're.
The
Well,
cassettes
isn't
don't
there
require,
ductwork to
they
the
don't require
cassettes?
ductwork. They'll have piping going to them.
All right, piping, ductwork,
Well, it's
It's
entirely
new.
different
but it's new installation
Correct.
of the pipework.
of the piping to
Right,
the
okay.
cassette.
But you're not going to have
The
these big
cassettes
round,
enclose
Yeah.
the blowers within
Right.
them, where the ductwork, we have a great big air handler, they're called,
Oh,
which is
that's
a
on the
huge
roof.
blower up in the service room, and that is what's currently providing the cooling, where these will be more localized, and they can call for a specific amount of cooling in that certain zone that they're covering.
so they'll be
And heat.
decommissioning the air handler, right? Or not?
I
asking
really
you
don't
a
know. I mean, I can get you the
air handler
engineer
will
that
still
designed
be
it.
there for
Still need that.
fresh air and
Okay.
backup to.
But not for AC? Not for AC?
It's AC, it won't be there for
Won't be
heat.
there for AC.
Currently, there is no provision for heat.
Right.
In the
Hallways.
hallways.
That's
But there
correct.
will be now.
Yes, with the new
Yes.
system, yes.
Originally, we were going to wire, well, we
Right.
did wire and put something out here, but now that will be obviated to do that.
So we're 34 years in on this building with the original system. What's the life of this particular upgrade?
I mean, we usually say 20 to 25 years on most of this stuff today. I mean, it's not like it's invincible.
So if we were to bond this, I'm not saying that's the right way to go at this moment, but if we were to bond this over, what would you bond it, over 20 years? I
Probably
mean,
20. 15.
So,
I would imagine, again, the statute calls out the useful life of the various components, but I believe heating system component is probably 20, at least 15, I would say, 15 or 20 years.
I mean, rates are very low right now, our credit is very good. I think we can do this with minimal impact, but I just want to make sure that I'm understanding the total cost of this entire project. CB Strain at 1.129 and Black Electric at 94.5, correct?
That's correct. There were two contracts, one for HVAC specific and one electrical, and Black Electric was the only electrical contractor to
Bidder.
bid.
Right. So that.
Why was there such a big discrepancy with SFI?
Again, we go back to what we were just talking about, these fan heads, and they claim they had just did a building similar size or double the size. They looked at strictly the number of fan heads and based their bid on that without really diving into the energy recovery ventilation part
Right, it
of
was incomplete and they
And it was
rescinded their
incomplete,
bid.
and, we felt like you had to throw it out. It was,
So you're recommending we go with SFI and Black Electric, is that
no,
correct?
CB
No,
Strain.
CB
Correct,
Strain.
correction, sorry, CB Strain and Black Electric.
Correct.
So based on this resolution, Supervisor, this just awards the contract, we can discuss the financing of this?
That's, I think, what Mr. Hand was suggesting, to do that, and then August 5th meeting, we would come back and discuss the funding.
All right, I'll move it.
I'll second it.
All in favor? Aye. Any nays or abstentions? The motion passes. Okay, thank you. The next item is Resolution 2019-149. This is a resolution authorizing engineering services agreement for Wildwood Sewer District improvements. This is going to be to authorize CPL to conduct the the engineering services analysis and plan that would also then, it's a requirement of actually our grant funding, and we need to show that that's been authorized. And I think the amount that you are proposing is $300,000, is that
Yeah,
correct?
it's in line with the whole grant application. When we put these things together, we try to budget and estimate where the project will go based on our initial map plan and report. So those numbers are in line with the funding that's been approved, so.
When we're looking, we had talked about, looking at, and I think also with Mr. Moran, how to divide various elements of this grant application into segregated units so that we could actually get more funding. So as I understand it, that in fact maybe the local government efficiency grant could be applied, which is, to this. That's something that, we are continuing to discuss with CPL, and also Scott Williams is, been actively engaged with us on coming up with these, and I think Mr. Moot had talked with them, with Scott again this afternoon
We did
on
speak
that.
briefly about it and have a game plan for these other applications, so,
The-
including the WQIP, which will help. fund
The issue is that by July 26th, we need to be filing the grant applications in these several areas, which then have the general commitments that Mr. Hand had talked about before as far as bonding commitment. It's a simple resolution, and I have those here. But for this particular one, this would be built into this particular grant proposal, where we've been talking with them on the phone about what we need to submit.
If I may, for the board, it's been a while since we dealt with the EFC, but the EFC provides funding at very reasonable rates. Also, in this case, it's associated with a grant. However, receiving the grant and EFC funding has a lot of requirements that we don't ordinarily meet. There's as Tim mentioned, the MWBE requirements, which requires a lot of administration at the contract when issuing proposals and considering the proposals that come in. And also, in addition to the contracts that are awarded, it flows down to the subcontractor level. So that creates construction management issues regarding, who's working on the job. There's a lot of administration functions when you're dealing with EFC and grant funding. You have to process the grant applications in order to make, for them to make progress payments along the lines. There's also some matching issues that come up, and as the supervisor had mentioned, certain grant programs can be used as matching grants in other grant programs. So where certain programs may require the town to have a 25 or 30% match, if the town receives a grant from a program, certain programs allow you to use the grant instead of the town having to make a cash contribution. So the process of sorting through all these various grants becomes quite a challenging task. I've worked with CPL, John Lazzaroni in particular, on a number of projects in the past with EFC, and they're familiar with the process. We've been burned in the past, and we've learned our lessons. So this is one of the things that I commend the CPL on, to do this up front, because invariably, when you get to the closing, everybody always looks for this resolution, which was not approved at the beginning.
It's a big monkey wrench.
And everybody has to backtrack and create it. So this was very good forethought, and I know that they've learned from mistakes in the past.
And in fact, based on our discussions with the several different agencies, and particularly relating to the other grant that we had applied for the water services, and I think that was, a $2.5 million water quality, WQIP. We were we were right at the cutoff. We were at the top of the list, but we weren't high enough to get the award for that time. But one of the things that they said, if we can fulfill a couple of the checkoffs such as this, and the other resolution I have for the water quality improvement program, then we stand a very good chance of getting that. They can't promise, but I think our sense of things, right, Tim and Jim, was that we would stand a very good chance of getting that grant as well, which is, again, $2.5 million that would go toward that, and that, I think, is only a 25% match, proposal, for that, rather than 60%, like with the sewer. So these things that we're having, it's where we realized, as we got caught up with Community Day and some other stuff, that we have a July 26th deadline, not so much for this 300,000, but for a couple of the others, which would be to prepare the grant applications as we did the last time. And for the water quality, it's basically dusting off what we had submitted the last time, which the board had approved at that point.
So it sounds like we're coming up on a lot of deadlines.
July 26th to getting grant applications. And then what we would do on August 5th is discuss, possible funding and the other next steps with respect to that.
So with respect to the July 26th deadline, since 2011, New York State has created what's called the Consolidated Funding Application Program. In the past, all various agencies had different grant programs that had different deadlines, and to spur economic growth in New York State, the state combined many of these grant programs into a single application. And now the review process, the regional economic development councils look at various projects. They give 20% of the grade, and then the state agencies give 80%, the remaining 80% of the grade in these application processes. So in looking at the projects, in the past, the grant process was more spread out over the year, whereas in the Consolidated Funding Application Program, almost every agency has deadlines of July 26th. Which creates, that one deadline. You may have heard the term Hunger Games. but that's what colloquially, the consolidated funding application process is called. So, and to the extent that, one thing that is beneficial is you can have a project, one, it's made, the process has given municipalities the ability to know about funding streams that were not readily accessible in the past. And one of the things, as the supervisor notes, you can have a sewer project which can tick off, clean water benefits for the Wappinger Creek, economic development benefits, helping, low-income communities, coordinating services between municipalities. So, we've qualified under 4 or 5 different programs just for one sewer project, similar with water projects. So, you get a little bit, the state is getting a little bit more bang for their buck. And as a successful municipality, you get probably the benefit of more different programs than you would have had in the past.
Well, based on all that, I'll move it.
So, just to clarify again, there's basically, we have four items that we've been talking about with respect to this. One is the $300,000 that would be the engineering study, which is related to the already approved grant, the 2.48 million that we have, and we need to move that along and reach. In addition, we have a local government efficiency grant, which was denied the last time. That is about $400,000 that could be used, we think, perhaps to offset. We need to resubmit the grant application is what we need to do that. That's what the simple resolution is one of the 3. Then we have this WQIP, where we also had previously submitted application that we didn't make the cutoff, but we're asking, I'm asking to resubmit the application. That's a $2.5 million, which has a 25% cost share. That's what we had the bond resolution back in 2018, for, which is still valid, right, Jim?
Yeah.
It's still a valid resolution. So now what I'm asking is just to file the grant application that Jim and I and Scott and Tim, will be working on. And then the final one, which is really a new one, which is a local, waterfront revitalization program that Scott came up with, which, would be applying for actually costs related to studying some of the potential renovations and also additional funding, with respect to the pier, the marina, or even, Reese Park, and working with the village up at that section of the town along the creek, or something else. It could be along our long waterfront that we have. So there's really the 4 elements that we have today.
I support all this.
Okay, we have a motion, and Jim, I guess we can then work on the 4 separate resolutions as part of this package.
Yeah, well, we can adopt this. So the motion on the table is the engineering services
Correct.
agreement for
First
Wildwood.
one.
And part of that is for formally doing a map plan and report.
Correct.
For the replacement of the wastewater treatment facility. So that's, we contemplate this project going in various phases, but that's the one phase we know we have to do.
So the first resolution would be for that $300,000 authorization for
Correct.
CPL to do that study.
Move.
And that is, by the way, the contract also includes construction management. So the management of the actual project itself.
Is a sewer?
Not just the design.
Is a sewer district expense, or is this a?
This would be a sewer district expense, yes.
I believe the councilman from the 3rd Ward made a motion.
Correct.
Second. All in favor? Aye. Any nays or abstentions? The motion passes. The second item would be a local government efficiency grant, authorization for the supervisor to work with our lawyers and grant writer and our engineering firm to prepare this grant where we are eligible for $400,000 to offset local cost share relating to that. It would be due on the 26th.
If I may, I think if we just added this to the end of the agenda.
Okay.
And proceed with the agenda as it's currently
Okay,
written,
that's
I think
fine.
it would help the town clerk.
This will be recorded.
Okay. So,
You don't want our help?
So then let's go ahead with it, and so we,
Just finish it.
let's just finish.
Drop it right in there. see what-
Just drop it right in there.
So I'll move the,
I mean, Joe, has caused you great heartache?
No, not at all.
Okay, I know.
I already put it.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's go and drop it in.
so I'll move the local government efficiency grant resolution.
Okay. We have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any nays or abstentions? The motion passed. Next one is WQIP. This is related to our previous one that we had passed a resolution for both bonding and to file the application. We need to refile the application. So this would be also authorization to basically dust it off, and to refile.
I move we go with the refiling.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any nays or abstentions? Motion passed.
So the last one, the local waterfront revitalization program, kind of piques my interest a little bit. I don't think we've done one of these.
If I may,
Yes.
this is actually a very useful tool, because it gives the town, it does a lot more than anybody would conceive of from the name. One of the things it does is, this comes out of the Federal Coastal
Yeah.
Act. So if the town adopts a local waterfront revitalization plan, it has control over federal actions in the Hudson River adjacent to the municipality.
Right.
So when you had the issue with the barges in the river
Right,
and things, we did not have an LWRP in place. It also, basically what it does is, it sets a goal for how the municipality wants to use its water resources. We have a lot of ability here, based on the discussion that we had regarding the Chelsea boat ramp. There's not a whole lot of public access sites along the Hudson
No.
River,
No,
because Cornelius Vanderbilt ran a railroad line
right.
next to the river many years ago, cutting off the access. And we have one of the few access points that is available to the public. So that's one thing that you can look at in the local waterfront redevelopment process. Also, potentially acquiring additional properties.
Yes.
That's what,
Yes.
That may come
That,
as a
Chris
result
was
of
just
that.
asking about that, and that's exactly part of the idea.
So, you can, and it gives you a lot of things, and also along the Wappinger Creek.
Yes.
I believe the coastal zone, there's a map of the coastal zone off the top of I should have looked at it before I came, but it doesn't quite, in some spots it goes almost up to Route 9. I believe it goes up the creek.
Yeah.
But at
into
least
the
up to
village.
our Fanny Reese Park and that boundary, it is
Yes,
covered.
yep.
according-
So there's a coastal zone map, and basically, any action that happens in the coastal zone map is covered by the plan. Under New York State executive law, there's certain things, and you, basically, the town sets priorities. One of the things is that it's very similar to the Greenway Compact, where you establish a series of goals, and municipal actions should look to those goals when you're contemplating either planning board or municipal actions within the coastal zone.
so relative to the local waterfront revitalization program, we've discussed in previous meetings the many opportunities in the councilwoman from Ward 2's area, which piqued our interest, right?
Oh, yeah.
In my ward, there happens to be an access point at the intersection of Old Troy Road and
Right.
Hamburg Road.
That's right.
Where they previously staged all the equipment for the bridge reconstruction, which if you drive down there now, it's owned by the county, but that's a perfect kayak launching place.
And our
Yep.
county executive has indicated a strong willingness to work with us on that point.
So I believe there's a lot of opportunity in this. I'd like to move this particular grant resolution.
I just
second.
have
Yeah, I'm
one-
happy to see where you have studied the drinking water
Yes.
for Chelsea and
well.
Houstonville,
Yep.
and the possibility of hooking up, to the river.
So,
It's important in that area.
and I believe that also in talking with Mayor Mount Alexander, he has some monies too that, are out of a similar grant grant that we can also explore, working with him on as well.
I was just looking at the grant application earlier in the meeting, and one of the things is that cooperation between villages and towns
Correct.
is encouraged, so I think to the extent that, the grant application is with the village,
Right.
that will probably be received
And
favorably.
he is strongly supportive of that, so that's why I mentioned that point. So, Bill, you want to move that?
Sure, I'll restate. I'll move the local waterfront revitalization program grant resolution.
I think having access to the Hudson is a great,
Great
for our town and community, and I'd gladly second it.
So we have a motion and second, actually. I think two, councilmen and women have done that. So all in favor? Aye. Any nays or abstentions? The motion passes. Thank you. The next item is Resolution 2019-150. This is a resolution authorizing grant of temporary easements to Dutchess County in connection with rehabilitation of portions of Old Hopewell Road. This is related to what will be the reconstruction, expansion of, the Old Hopewell Road when that project starts. Jim, you have, some, you've looked into the easement issues.
So, I've been talking with Dutchess County DPW. These are just temporary construction easements for certain town-owned parcels along Old Hopewell Road. I believe one of them is the Kendall Farms property. But basically it's for access to putting in, part of it would be our water lines that we're looking at in certain areas, as well as certain construction work. So, they submitted the documentation. This is also a program that's being funded, I believe, by certain federal monies. So, under the requirements of the federal funding program, one of the documents is that we waive our right to receive an appraisal, and that we understand that, in essence, we're technically one of the documents is we're donating the temporary construction easement to the county. So, but that has to be reflected. So we're not getting any compensation. Several years ago, we had the appraisal done. I believe the town received $950. The appraisal, I think, cost $5,000. So there's really no point in getting an appraisal, and particularly for a temporary construction easement.
Jim, I thought of you as I researched this, as this roadway is formerly known as the New Hamburg Turnpike.
Correct.
1815, right? So it's probably 55 feet wide.
66.
66 feet wide. If you could have seen what we went through, actually it affected your property.
I know it did, yes. I've learned a lot of history from Jim on that.
So it could have been worse for what the property they need.
Exactly.
Right? So this is
Yeah.
actually not a bad situation, but.
But my property was rods, measured in rods.
Oh, Wheeler Hill Road is like one of the oldest roads in the town.
It's a four-rod road.
Four-rod road?
Four-rod road, but New Hamburg with an H Turnpike. So I'll move it.
Okay.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any nays or abstentions? The motion passed. Next item is Resolution 2019-151. This relates to the interconnection that I was talking about. It's resolution authorizing intermunicipal water supply and transmission agreement between the Village of Wappinger Falls and the Town of Wappinger on behalf of the United Wappinger Water District. This is something that Jim had been is working on. I'll let him talk about it. I do have a copy of what Jim had sent out.
I also had made some copies.
Yeah. Do you have the red line version or the clean version?
I just have a clean version, I don't have a red
I
line.
have red line version if you
But,
want to see it.
anyway, what, the last year, as part of the consolidated funding application for one of the water programs, we had submitted an intermunicipal agreement. We had actually submitted a combined water and sewer agreement, which got to be quite complicated. The sewer, from what we were told, the sewer project, the sewer grant program was happy with the agreement. The water folks were less happy with the water agreement, so we went back and redrafted it. And,
And based on their recommendations.
right. And so one of the things that we did is we scaled this resolution back for, right now, just to include the interconnection between the village and the town, the United Wappinger Water District. It would be at a point by Myers Corners, roughly across, corner, the intersection of Losey Road and Myers Corners is where the work is contemplated to be done. So what the agreement basically says is that the construction work would be done. The village wants this to go forward because right now they have some issues where they need to take their storage tank offline and do maintenance to it. So during the time it would be offline, they would have access to the town's water system. So under this agreement, the cost would be split 50-50, but the village would pay for the initial costs, and then the town would reimburse the village after it's done. And all of the funding and everything is completed. With respect to this intermunicipal agreement, for the charge between the village and the town would be, in essence, what at cost. So whatever the cost that the town has for generating its water, the village would pay, and if the town takes water from the village, we would pay whatever cost the village has to generate the water. So for municipal purposes, this is just, in essence, an interconnection for water. It's not contemplated to be used every day right now. In fact, having this discussion with John Lazzaroni, because it's an emergency connection, that would only be used intermittently. It does not require a water supply permit from New York State DEC, from what we've been told. So that streamlines the process a little bit. We probably just have to do a map plan and report for the improvement to the United Wappinger Water District for the facilities. But again, it's subject to this grant project. So I believe the village intends to go forward with the project regardless of what grant funding there is, so.
What is the total fiscal impact?
Don't have it. I mean, there's really no fiscal impact on the intermunicipal agreement.
Right.
Somewhere the construction,
There's a long history.
Was it 900?
900,000, I think. I don't know.
There's a long history in that area relative to water annexes and water use, and
Yes.
if you look back in the history of the town, there was a lot of horse trading that has occurred over the years.
Yep.
To create a water annex and an extension of village boundaries. So, my concern here is certainly for emergency purposes, I don't have any objection if you look at the second whereas. But we have to remember that we have a number of commercial entities inside the town of Wappinger, outside the village boundaries, that are paying significantly higher water rates to be tenants to the Village of Wappingers Falls water system, Outback being one of them. The Hannaford Plaza, which is known as Wappinger Plaza, is another one. But I've had Outback representatives contact me on a number of occasions about the exorbitant water rates they pay. In fact, they've told me they pay the highest water rates in New York State here because they're paying village water rates outside the village boundaries. So my opinion is that if we're going to further explore, having an intermunicipal water supply transmission agreement that actually involves opening up the gate to share resources, that there really needs to be some level of negotiation at the table so that those that are outside the boundaries of the Village of Wappingers Falls are not, entirely at the mercy of the village board for water rates.
Yeah, so that's why Mr. Rand
I
has
agree with you.
set up this not to cover that at this point in time.
Yeah, so this agreement just deals with the interconnection, and there would be meters and things of that sort. Going forward, it contemplates, one, a connection with Woodhill Green, and then also the properties on the east side of Route 9 in the area of Woodhill Green, which are in the town but not in the village. It's kind of a strange boundary line up there.
Well, but it contemplates it, but it doesn't provide for it at this
No,
point in time.
not in this- right,
Yeah,
at this
Bill,
point.
so
No.
that issue will be discussed at a later point.
I'm just saying that as we begin this conversation.
Correct.
If you read the minutes from the late 60s in this town,
From a while ago.
you know, there was significant discussion
Understood.
about water resources, and if you look at the village line and you wonder why it goes over here and over there, it's because of those discussions.
Understood.
And I'm all for sharing services. I want to make sure that we have equity on our mind, though,
Absolutely.
when we're having these discussions.
We've raised those points. Now, of course, the village has their response saying that those, you know, our town businesses such as Outback and Hannaford haven't been paying for capital expansion and other things.
Well,
But that's to be discussed, you know, because Jim and I have raised that both in those discussions.
And
Yeah,
the
so
reason
it's on the
why-
table.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
Basically, what historically has happened is that the water users outside the village typically pay twice the water rate.
Right.
And what that includes is the capital cost, because if you're in the village of Wappingers Falls, the debt service for the system is on your village tax
Yes.
bill.
Right.
They don't have benefit assessments and special districts. That is directly included in the tax bill.
Yes.
And since they're outside the district, outside the village, they don't pay village taxes. So it's, the capital component of the water system is included, in essence, in that doubling of the.
Right, and understand, the genesis of that was the town of Wappinger did not have a water source to provide to those
Correct.
businesses. We now have one that's across the parking lot, that's on the corner of Losi Road. So that's the difference. All I'm saying here to represent the residents that don't live in the village of Wappingers Falls, we just have to make sure that we're also looking at
Correct.
the impact on the local businesses too.
To ensure those residents and businesses, it's already on the table and will be
And I
discussed
believe,
in the future.
I believe you, I just
Yeah.
wanted to make sure I made that
Sure,
point. Thank you.
absolutely. Thank you. Now, we have a, resolution, a motion?
I'll
On the
move it.
resolution.
I'll move the resolution.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Any nays or abstentions? The motion passes. Thank you. The next item is Resolution 2019-152. This is a resolution authorizing the contract for installation of sleeves under Myers Corner Road for water and sewer mains. This is what we had communicated on earlier, the $89,500 issue.
I'll second it.
I certainly will support this, but is there any way that that job can get a little bit smoother out there? I'm not sure.
I've raised it with Commissioner Balkine, so.
I mean, I feel for those businesses.
Well, yes.
And I'm sure Commissioner Balkine is doing all he can. He gets it, but that is a rough ride.
Well, no, I mean, obviously, as a resident who lives right along that area, I'm well acquainted with it. I know that there were some businesses that you couldn't even get into today.
that's right.
Because of what they were doing construction-wise, so it is seriously affecting them. I
Yeah.
agree, there is an impact.
And if we can, just for the record, Supervisor, just restate that you've been in discussion with the Commissioner of DPW relative to.
Yeah, and in fact, I put in a special request to have signs made. They have made the signs. I'm not sure if it's been installed yet. They're waiting for the Go Dig, review, but also the county executive, committed to do some more things to help out, particularly DeGarmo Plaza. And that's supposedly in works.
Our phones have been ringing.
That's right. All of us.
We can only
have
tell
been.
people it's a county job
Yeah.
so much.
I even get anonymous calls from, I think it's Mike, complaining.
Well, let's see if we can support those
So,
businesses.
we have been, but I will follow up tomorrow, on this again.
If we can get a timeline maybe of when when
Yeah.
it's gonna be done.
Good luck on that one.
We help.
No, well, they do have a timeline, but they haven't been.
I mean, they're
really-
gonna go all the way down to 376 from what my understanding is, so it's gonna be a while.
So, okay, but definitely we'll follow up again.
Yeah.
We still have to vote on this one.
So, yes, this one again is $89,500
I made
for
the motion.
installing 4
Second.
sleeves.
I made the motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any nays or abstentions? The motion passes. Next item is what we had heard earlier from Mr. Haran relating to the, payment for duct cleaning services. This is the one where we have already received $7,800 from the insurance company, but it's sitting in our fund, in our account. And so the total payment, which will be due to Servpro, is $19,500, of which, $7,800 we have in our account, but will be applied toward this payment. So effectively, it's $11,700 that will be an additional amount out of, I'm not sure which line, Bill.
Yeah, I'll amend that last sentence to include the amount of $11,700.
162452, I'm not familiar with what it is, but I believe it's a maintenance line anyway. Steve, is it coming out of your budget or no? 1620, is that you, or is that just a general repairs?
I think it's
I'll have to see where we're at on that.
All right,
There is a line for town hall repairs.
okay,
So we're moving it from the general A fund balance, correct? Which is 0917.
oh, okay, it's coming
Yeah,
out, I'm
that's
sorry.
what we're doing.
I misread it,
We're
so
moving
it's being appropriated to 162452. I have no objection to that.
And I have a motion on the table to
Second.
amend it, the 11,000.
For the 11,700.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. There's a motion and a second. All in favor? Aye. Any nays or abstentions? Seeing none, the motion passed. The next item is Resolution 2019-154, resolution authorizing budget transfers for tree trimming. This is at the request of the highway superintendent for some additional work that it needs to be done with respect to the roads.
I'll move it.
Second.
All in favor?
There's just one
Okay.
change on the budget line. I'll give it to the town clerk.
It's just a typo?
It was dot four, and I believe it's dot four. Oh, hold on.
It's a 4-0 number?
I believe it's 402.
So then it's just a typo on the resolution.
Yes.
So he can correct that.
Okay.
It's the budget line. that
That's
has-
no big
Getting
deal.
that corrected in
It's
the
within
budget line.
it's within the right department and,
Yes, it's, the sand line is 5142401 instead of 4142.4.
and then it's still going to the dot 400, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so that's just a typo.
Okay.
Okay, we had a motion and second with that slight change. All in favor?
Aye.
Any nays or abstentions? The motion passes. The next resolution is Resolution 2019-155. This is to pass the correspondence.
I'll move it.
Second.
Second.
Okay, all in favor? Aye. Any nays or abstentions? The motion passed. Any items for special consideration and new business before we move to go into executive session?
No.
Okay, seeing none, then I'd like to have a motion for executive session. This would be a litigation update and also a potential real estate matter that we need some advice of counsel.
I'll move it.
I'll second it.
All in favor? Aye. Any nays or abstentions? Okay, the motion passed, and we'll now go into executive session. We'll be back after that.